I am extremely thankful for the position that I'm in right now. I wake up this morning and as I record this, and I'm so full of gratitude. Like, you have no idea how thankful I am, my everyone's life is different. Everybody's experience is unique. But in my case, I would say that I learned a lot early on because of the fact that a lot of things happened in my early years, a lot of things, and it prompted me to learn fast. It's almost like when somebody throws something at you and they say, think fast. Some of us have been forced to think fast in terms of survival and strategy and, things like that. There's a lot of people currently going through situations, and it's probably not the right time to talk about it. And that's absolutely understood. So it's always good to give it some time, let it age, and we all know that lies never age well. So by the time you speak the truth, by that time, everybody, for the most part, they're going to figure out that that person that's been slandering you, they've been lying. So when you talk about it, it's just going to be even more powerful, because now it actually places you in a position where, you are the beacon of truth now. You're the one shining the light on the situation. And, most likely you probably already cut these people off anyways. But if they happen to be watching with your content, then it's like, oh, it's just kind of like, it's almost like you're giving them context, the proper context for what happened, because now they're like, yeah, this person is telling the truth, because what they're saying actually makes sense, and it explains everything. So there's that. But going back to earlier, I just woke up this morning and I just felt so good. I felt amazing, because I think about so many situations I could have been in, that I could have been stuck in, that I could have been trapped in. I think about certain individuals that have came to my life that had tried to destroy me, and they have failed. And it's just, I have nothing but gratitude to the Most High. Not only that, but I'm also very happy, and I'm very, very happy that for myself, that I have actually listened to divine wisdom and real discernment. So I could not afford to look at things through a rose-colored lens. I couldn't just, oh yeah, you make me feel so good, I'm gonna just let you in my life and so you can ruin it, right? See, like I said, I would rather be seen as aggressive than passive. So that's not an insult to me. When an abusive person, right, when a toxic individual says that I'm being too aggressive, or I'm aggressive in some way, I take that as a compliment. You want to know why? These people that call you aggressive, and here's the thing. I have had somebody call me that, right? I have had somebody call me aggressive, and I ask him, like, so what makes me aggressive? What did I do that made you say that? Because I'm kind of going through cognitive dissonance, because I don't recall ever being aggressive, toward that person, right? And according to this individual, they thought that my boundaries were aggressive, because when when he sat back and thought about it, he said, "Oh, I don't like how," basically he didn't like how I set boundaries, for the fact that I wasn't willing to, lay down with him within the first week. And apparently a woman that says no to having relations on week 1, apparently that makes her aggressive, because she said no, I'm not doing that. I barely met you. There you go. So clearly this person doesn't know what the word aggression really means. What I'm saying is that, I have protected myself very well. You have to really vet the people that you're talking to seriously, because I'm telling you right now, being free is a beautiful feeling. You think about, at least in my case, like I said, a lot of things have happened in my early years. I've seen a lot of things, so it's kind of like, it kind of catapulted me to the position where I feel like I'm actually twice my age mentally, I have had people tell me this time and time again that, when they talk to me, it sounds like they're talking to a 50-year-old or something, and I've had that since I was 18. So by the time I reach 18, like, I've already seen a lot. I've seen a lot of bullshit that when it's in front of me, I'm just like, I can call a spade, you know what I mean? And some people don't like that, and I really don't give a shit, because at the end of the day, anybody who tries to take away my freedom, anybody who tries to take away my sovereignty, my autonomy, they are a threat to my life. The way I look at it, they're a threat to, again, anything that's a threat to your sovereignty. They're basically a threat to your mental health, a threat to your life overall, because you never know, they might get to a point where they want to take you out. And I'm not talking about taking you out on a restaurant. Oh no, they actually want to eliminate you, because that's how much they want to control you. That's how much if they can't have you, nobody can. Like, some people, they really take that to heart, and they will go out of their way to do that. And who wants to go through that, right? One thing that I love is that I think about, the ways I invested in myself, since ever since 2012. It's been a journey, and I've been tested, throughout those years, and being able to read people. And it kind of freaks me out. I ain't gonna lie. I used to think, man, am I crazy or something? Is this the PTSD? And then I realized, it is not crazy if I'm right, like, it's not crazy if I'm right, because man, man, oh man. I've had the craziest dreams, that would warn me about certain people, right? And then it would, like, the truth would unfold in real life. And I think about that dream and I'm like, whoa, that person really was out to get me. That person was really, full of darkness, and they wanted to take away my light. They wanted to take away my freedom. Here's the thing, right? When you're a very attractive person inside and out, magnetic, powerful in every way, spiritually, intellectually, all of that. And yet you carry yourself with humility. You're just an overall amazing person. Why is that? Because you invested into yourself. That's what people don't realize, is that all you have to do is invest into yourself. Stop being a people pleaser. Stop trying to, appease to other people that really could give a damn about you. You have no choice but to become better. And that's where I was at. Like I said, and I know some people might not agree with this, but in my perspective, I'm actually very thankful that I've experienced the traumas that I've experienced, because it gave me a front row seat of literally all these events that have given me the knowledge that I need to survive, the knowledge to thrive on top of that, I know the tactics. I've seen it being done on others. I've seen the tactics done on me. I've experienced it. I've had psychological problems as a result. I've lost my sense of reality once upon a time. I used to question myself, and the gaslighting is real. When you experience gaslighting, it is very real. Of course, when you heal from it, you realize how intense it was. Like, looking back at my experiences, I'm like, how in the fuck did this person manage to gaslight my SA trauma? You know what I mean? Like, what SA trauma is, but they have a way of twisting your mind in a way to make you, it's almost like hypnosis, and you never know. It might just be some black magic behind, it might be some of that going on. That, yeah, it's a lot of things that happen, but I'm telling you this right now, is that investing into myself was the best decision I ever made. I was never boy crazy. Nah, because when you see certain things growing up, it's kind of hard to be boy crazy, like, no, if anything, they'll drive you crazy, so I would say that I've always been very mature for my age, and being able to see these things, because of the fact that I was forced to learn. I was forced to think fast. I was forced to do that because it was in my face. I'm paying attention. I'm observing. Abusive people didn't like me because they felt like I could see them, because I can see you. I know that. I know what you're about, and so again, I gather the data. right? And I analyze it. And so I'm like, okay, why would I be boy crazy? you know? So, I don't like being abused. So here's the thing, it's just the fact that being a young lady, and I know this because I look like a very young lady. I'm about to be 30. So if you were to look at me, you would never think that I'm about to be 30. Actually, some people think I just graduated high school, which is crazy. And what's disturbing about this is the fact that the reason why certain gentlemen think that I'm straight out of high school is because it's almost like they were hoping that I would be their next victim. You can think what you want, but as a woman, it's my job to protect myself, Now, luckily, I'm off the market, so I'm not concerned about any of this shit. If I was on the market, I wouldn't even want people to know. You understand what I'm saying? Because most of what you see out there is a cesspool of toxic, narcissistic, abusive people, both men and women. So you guys, the gentlemen, the good gentlemen, the ladies, you all have got to protect yourself when you're talking to people, because these people, man, they could be charming, they can be the best, they could be the best. You could think they're the best person in your life, and you just find out this person is like your worst nightmare, and you regret being with them, So, man, and it's just, there's just so many different ways that they break you down, and they try to stop you from doing what you love. They want to stop you from elevating. You notice that? Like, what kind of person would have a problem with you working out? Even if you're at home, you're working out at home, you want to go back to school, you want to start a business. Like, what kind of person would want to stop you from that? I never understood that. That's not a partner. That's basically somebody, that's basically a handler. That's not a partner. Like, what kind of partner would be against you trying to make more money, which would actually benefit the household? Anything that you're doing, you're literally benefiting not only yourself, but the household, because they look at it as, the handler looks at it as, that's your way to escape from them. To where, again, it's going to be seen as a threat. Everything. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about me, right? Let me tell you something about me. I feel like, looking at all this stuff, my existence alone is a threat. My existence alone, my essence, the way I am, it's already a threat. It's always been a threat. That's why whenever I encountered shady characters in my life, they either try to destroy me, because they know they can't control me. They can't control me. They can't, because I see through everything. I see the tactic. Like, it's like laser vision. Like, I already see everything, and what is it? Yeah. The fact that I'm confident, magnetic. But see, here's the thing. You can be magnetic. Your magnetism doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to engage with every single person that is looking at you or curious about who you are and stuff, But these abusive people, they don't pay attention to that. They pay attention to the fact that you are magnetic, and now they're gonna paint a narrative about, oh yeah, you're a cheater, or you're this, and you're just out there. It's like, bro, you cannot control how people feel about you. If a lot of people are attracted to your light, which they're going to be, because why? Because you don't let people stress you out. I don't allow people to stress me out. And I love that about myself, So I want you guys, man, to really, there's nothing wrong with you wanting to live a stress-free life. Sometimes you have to say no. Say no. I'm very thankful for all the moments where I've said no. Because I've said no a whole lot. Oh, you're so aggressive. You become the worst person in the world, Start to have people talking shit about you. I really could give a fuck. Let them talk. The way I look at it, let them talk, because at the end of the day, I mean, I know they're lying. And if you stay the hell away from them, if you get far, far away from them, you run. When you run from them, I mean, they're not in your vicinity. They can't disturb anything. You're just start a new life. I love who I am as a person, and I realize that you guys have to embrace, these things, man. I love, like, let me tell you this. I love the fact that abusive men think I'm aggressive, because the only time I've been called aggressive is by toxic individuals. The only people that talked bad about me were people that were toxic and abusive. So, I have never had a good man tell me bad things about me. So, you know what I mean? Now, in your case, you might have had so-called good people talking about you, because that's because the narcissists, the covert narcissists, they have tainted their minds, because they spoke ill of you. So I understand that aspect, but that doesn't last long, because normally people like to look into things. People like to dig for more truth, because the more crazier the slander sounds, I mean, they're going to want to really get to the bottom and be like, is this really true? Because this sounds kind of outlandish, and then they see you and they're like, that doesn't even make sense. See what I'm saying? So, but either way, it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, anyone who's quick to believe in lies, they're not your people, and that's okay. And you walk away from them, whether they're good people or bad people. They still believe in the lies. So for your mental health, for your sake, stay away from them, and start a whole new life. And I look at it as, for you guys, man, it's an opportunity for you to invest into yourself, finally, because think about it. When was the last time you did that? When was the last time you did things for you? You've always been doing things for other people. Start doing things for you, and live for God, putting God first, and then allowing yourself to flourish, to actually blossom, because these abusive people, they don't want us to grow. Nah, they don't want that. They hate that, but see, here's the thing about me, and my experience is that I've always been like I said, I'm an old soul, right? So it's like I knew too much for my own good. I was that kid that would say things that I sounded like someone's grandma, even though I'm a little girl, and when a person when a person hears that, it kind of scares them a little bit, just like how when I was a teenager and I would say things, and it would scare, see, let me tell you something, maybe because I'm a woman. When you're a woman, right? When you're a young woman and you have all this knowledge, right? This wisdom, it's very rare. And what's so crazy is that even though I was a teenager, right? There have been people that would try to pressure me to having a man in my life. And it's just like, bro, I'm 15, 15, what is it? 14, 15, 16, no, now, yeah, I was talking, you get to know people, you talk, you like someone, but as far as actually having a boyfriend, you're thinking about marrying them and all that shit, because that's basically what it is. When they say novio, right? Novio is Spanish for boyfriend. Novio also means the person that you're supposed to marry, because it's customary that your boyfriend is going to be the man that you're going to marry. This is like when you were young, you were thinking I never want to be married because it just looks miserable, It doesn't have to be like that. I realize that marriage and a covenant is what you make it, and is dependent on who you marry, and then whether or not you guys are equally yoked, and that's what makes it work. However, there's a lot of people that are not on that vibration. They're not in the right mind, first of all. And there's a lot of people that have an agenda, right? So I read energy. I listen. I use discernment. There are predatory men who do want to get with younger women just because it's easier to take advantage of them. But in my experience, when I was a teenager, and the older guy would realize how I'm very advanced for my age, and it kind of freaked them out, because that's how I know that the fact that you're freaking out right now, because I may be 15, but I sound like I'm 51. You got to flip the numbers, and you're freaking out right now. I love it, because it means that I know who you are, and you're not going to destroy me. I'm not going to allow you to destroy me. There have been men who have tried to destroy me before you. What makes you think I'm going to let you do it now? That's the kind of energy that I have, because I protect myself. Because if we don't, guess what? They're going to blame it on us, especially when we end up with children. Oh, you should pick better. You should pick better. Yeah. And you know what I did? You know what I picked when I was 15, 16? What is it? 15? Yeah, 15. You know what I picked? I picked myself. I picked myself. And I picked myself up whenever I did fall in love. And then I realized it was fake love, right? I learned about fake love. Or it just wasn't meant to be, whatever you want to call it, right? Having knowledge and understanding of, things that, this is what happens when you eavesdrop, asunto de adultos. What does that mean? When you eavesdrop grown folks' business, right? But in Spanish, we call it asunto de adultos, right? When you eavesdrop that and you listen. I mean, it's kind of hard. It's not really eavesdropping if they talk loud, like I could hear everything you're saying. And this is good stuff, I feel like I might need this when I get older. You listen to it, you're like, yeah, Now, here's the thing. I'm going to tell you this, right? Investing into yourself, and like I said, I chose myself. All this stuff about, oh, you should pick a better man. Why don't you have a boyfriend? I'm 15. I don't want one. I don't, because in order for you to have a boyfriend, that would mean that you have to marry. That was the idea that was put in my mind, is that when you have a boyfriend, that man, that so-called boyfriend, is supposed to be pretty much like your fiance. That's how they look at it, in that sense. You're not supposed to just be dating different guys. And I'm like, look, I don't even want to be married. Okay. Because I see too much right now. I see a pattern here and I don't like what I'm seeing, And here's another thing. I want to say this too. It's not that I didn't believe that there were good men. I was aware that there were good men. It's just the fact that I understood my position in the environment that I lived in. I understood that I come from a low income background and I had a lot of wounds. You guys know that I was very wounded. So because of that, understanding that, I understood that, man, a toxic and controlling man would love to get their hands on me because I have those wounds that they can basically control me with. I was aware of that. Yeah, you might think, damn, that you're very wise for your age, but I didn't underestimate the power of seduction and the power of manipulation coming from an older guy. You know what I mean? And me being, in my teens and stuff like that. Like I was aware of the possibility of this happening, but I wanted to allow myself to get so close to falling into that trap. Because these older guys, man, they're more experienced, they know what to say, they know what to do. If you go through narcissistic abuse from anybody, you're going to see the same pattern. It's just that it's either going to be familial or romantic, one or the other. But here's this. I understood that a woman like me, with the wounds that I had, that, a toxic, controlling, abusive man, I would stand out to them. I know because I have been a target for those type of people for most of my life. From my experiences that I've had, like, you know. And because I was aware of that, I was like, you know what? One thing I was fighting against, the feeling of, damn, am I even worthy of a good man? And that's a fucked up thing to ask when you're only 15 and you've been through all these traumas that literally was not my fault. It's sad. It's sad to be a gentle, innocent young girl and ask yourself, do you deserve a good man? When you do. It's just that you're surrounded by darkness. You know what I mean? And because I was surrounded by the darkness, I'm not even mad at it. I love it. I love the fact that I learned early. I don't have to waste my time being stuck with an abusive person because I understand. And I say that with empathy. I don't want to come off like an asshole, but you guys, man, there's people that are trapped in these situations, and I feel for them because I know and I've seen it coming. And because I've experienced what I experienced at a young age, I'm not mad at it. When I talk about it, it's not because, oh, I want you to feel bad for me. No, I don't want you to feel bad for me at all. I want you to feel empowered and enlightened by all the things that I've shared, that you know, that I've learned. And then also it's kind of not, it's really empowering because you're like, wow, this person it turned out amazing. Yes. Yes. And it's possible for a lot of you guys that are wounded, you know, men and women. You guys have been through a lot. You guys have been through so much that you didn't even deserve to go through that stuff. And then these narcissists, they try to make you feel like you deserved it somehow. You know, they really get in your head. And I'm here to tell you that you are very worthy to be you're worthy of investment. And who could invest better into you than you, right? So do that. Do that. You know, because that's what I did. And I love it. I love it. I love the fact that I experienced what I experienced because I came out a lot sharper, wiser, and it only proves how much I truly do have the warrior spirit. So I'm very happy about it. I look at it as, yeah, you know, it's an honor for me to still have light, and my light is more powerful than ever, you know, and it's only going to get more powerful from here on out. And there's nothing that anyone can do about that.